The most important value of satire, that it humanizes people in power, so you can stand against them.
Bassem Youssef was known as the Jon Stewart of Egypt, the host of the most popular television show in the history of the Arab world. A heart surgeon by training, Youssef was inspired by The Daily Show frontman to start a weekly show on YouTube in early 2011 from his own laundry room.
I just said that you're an inspiration to me, yes, thank you.
Just as the Egyptian Revolution and the Arab Spring were getting underway, Youssef mercilessly satirized the Islamists and then the military men who took power, and he caught fire.
Bassem Youssef,
the most popular man in Egypt.
His show, which was called The Show, ended up drawing an audience of 30 million per episode. The backlash that followed is the subject of Youssef's new memoir, Revolution for Dummies, and the documentary Tickling Giants, which is directed by Sarah Taxler, a senior producer for The Daily Show. The book and film tell the story of Youssef's rise as a cultural icon of the Arab world, only to be censored and driven out of Egypt. His downfall began with a viral segment mocking President Mohamed Morsi's hat in 2013. In March, a warrant was issued for his arrest for insulting the president and Islam.
Does satire get you into trouble?
I'll tell you this, it doesn't get me into the kind of trouble it gets you into.
أن أقتل باسم يوسف ليس الآن.
The Islamists, they are hiding behind this sacred ideology of religion.
Right.
And they're not used to be criticized. So to break that mold and to just like be pointed at them and make fun of them, they couldn't handle it.
So Youssef offered to turn himself in, wearing his Morsi hat. You went in and police officers and the prosecutors' employees were, asking to take selfies with you. Yeah. They were big fans of yours.
It was almost surreal to be in a place where I am being questioned while the people who are in charge of questioning me or questioning me were fans and taking pictures. I have absolutely no manual to do this.
Though Youssef was released on bail, his days as host of the show were numbered. Just 3 months later, the military deposed and jailed President Morsi, dissolved the constitution, and silenced the critical press. General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi ultimately became the new ruler of Egypt. So after the military coup, I guess we can call it a coup now. I know you took great pains to talk about how it was a word that was not allowed in Egypt
that
for
was
a time,
that was the C word.
Yeah. There was martial law and you couldn't broadcast for a couple months. Even your staff, they were fighting with their parents about whether they should continue to do the show now that the military was in power. In moments like that where you were confronting these new regimes that kept popping up during the revolution, how did you decide when it was too dangerous, or how did you find the inspiration to keep going on and making fun of them?
Well, part of me was scared to come back. I was scared of how can we make fun of the new regime, because the new regime was very popular. I mean, you can say whatever you want about the regime, but Sisi was popular. The army is popular. It's part of our culture. I mean, and I mentioned in the book how the people would consider the army is even more sacred than religion. And I almost took the decision of stopping the show, but there were all of these people behind me, and I couldn't stop. I know that I will lose my popularity between a huge amount of people. And then Jon said, well, my friend, this is true courage. We did the same thing with the regime, and that lasted a few weeks, and we're done.
So how did you ultimately get censored and have to flee Egypt? What happened there?
In these regimes, they don't have to go and take you from your house into prison. They will have to make something else. They will put someone else in the front. So lawsuits and legal verdicts, that doesn't really mean anything other than to cripple you. So I had an arbitration case with my previous channel, the one that stopped me, and I was slammed with the biggest fine in the history of Egyptian entertainment, 100 million pounds. Never before we've seen that kind of figure, and I knew that they were not they know that I didn't have the money. They were coming at me. They would know that the next day I will be in jail, the next day I will be on a no-fly list. So I escaped before that happened.
One particularly poignant episode that you talk about is the fact that the military, during the, when Sisi was campaigning for president, running his non-campaign campaign, that they trotted out this device that's called the complete cure device, which they said could cure hepatitis C and AIDS
and everything, and cancer,
diabetes, like everything, right? And it's interesting because you even had people on your staff who were saying, you know, we shouldn't criticize this because if the military says it, it must be true.
Yeah.
You read that was a point where you really questioned, you know, what you were doing because the military set this deadline that in a few months, you know, this machine was going to cure everybody of hepatitis C. And so you would remind people, hey, this deadline's coming up. If they don't meet the deadline, we should hold them accountable, right? Or there should be some explanation. And then it just kind of went away, right? And all the talking heads stopped talking about it. So what does that tell you about, you know, the nature of satire? Like, where do you think it can have a big impact if it, like you're saying,
As a matter of fact, the story that you just mentioned can tell you what can satire not do. It cannot make people stand like to do things. I mean, if the people don't, I mean, all right, so I was reminding people every week, and then it was gone, and then the show was gone. Did people do anything? No. The show was taken off the air. Did people do anything? No. We reminded people with all of the stupidity that the regime did. And now the regime is handing over a piece of land to another country, and the people are just sitting around and not doing anything. There is a limit to satire. I mean, the limit of a satirist or a comedian just stops at the edge of a television or a theater. If the people are not willing to do anything, they can. Of course, there are people who are willing to do something, a lot, but they end up in jail or they end up killed. And that might sometimes be enough for other people to be scared. I mean, like, look at me. I'm not brave. I'm not courageous. I escaped. I fear for my life. It's just like, I have to say that Egypt it doesn't matter how far you are from Egypt, it still consumes you. It's just like you care about what happens, and I'm debating, should I? I mean, it's just like, it's nothing but disappointment. You wonder, like, it's just like, does it make a difference? Will it make a difference? It's just like, you think about that over and over again.
And a big thing that you return to is, you know, kind of this idea that people who are really otherwise very intelligent can become super credulous and, you know, believe these things depending on the context or who's in power.
Yeah, the complete cure device was a perfect example of how people, regardless of their intelligence or education, would just like fall into ideologies. The truth, facts don't care anymore. So when people are telling me, like, how do you reach other people who have these crazy right-wing ideas? Like, you won't, because they don't care about the truth. Ideology first. So if your ideology is Islamist or pro-military, it will not change. And because if you question the ideology based on these facts, everything that you have amassed in your mind, everything that you have accumulated as in belief will come crumbling down. And nobody is ready to lose their faith or believe in a God or in a military leader. But the problem is that these people, they equate themselves with religion, with God. They equate themselves with the military, with the land, with the country.
And Sisi is basically like a deity, right? Or he like portrayed that way.
Yes.
His face is on everything.
The most important value of satire, that it humanizes people in power, so you can stand against them. We did that under the Islamists, because the Islamists, anybody coming on the wave of a Muslim rule was considered holy. We broke that down.
Yeah.
We tried doing that in the military, but we didn't have time. But time itself, now after 3 years, everybody see what kind of a phony is the military leadership is.
What was that like for you, kind of going through that experience of delivering this? You know, you could see that it was really genuine for people, and then having that taken away.
Well, I mean, it represents whatever happened to the country. That's the show. There is a window of opportunity. We have freedom. You have a freedom of political satire, and you have freedom of so many things. So many talents were like budding everywhere, and then it was just taken away.
Have there been any sort of actual kind of structural changes with the people or the conversation in Egypt?
Propaganda is very short-lived, especially in the time of internet.
Yeah.
You can't really fool the people for long. Now there's a meltdown with everything. Meltdown with political, social structure, economy is a huge thing. They're failing big time. And I don't know how long or how sustainable this can continue. And I fear that, I mean, people talk about a next generation, a next revolution. I don't know if they're going to be a next revolution or total destruction, because we have seen the prequel in Syria. You know, when the regime was threatened, they destroyed the whole country to stay in power. And I don't think those people are different.
You talk about Sharia law. It's frequently invoked by Republicans usually to, say things like, well, they're trying to bring Sharia law to Michigan. Even people on the left, like Bill Maher, who are skeptical of Islam, they will say things like, there's no such thing as a moderate Muslim, right? You look at surveys, 70% of them think we should live under Sharia. Why do you think that that's a false argument?
Well, first of all, I'm not a big fan of Sharia whatever in the Constitution. I think whatever Constitution we have should be secular. But also you need to understand what does it mean by this word. I mean, a lot of people who say we want to live under Sharia, maybe they think about because it's stuff that are related to marriage or inheritance. This is all under Sharia. But of course there is also what people say that is part of Sharia, that you kill someone who changes their religion, or the beheading or whatever. How many countries in the world other than Saudi Arabia is doing that? Right? And they all have Sharia in their constitution. So yes, it is a big problem there, but here when you say people think Sharia, you need to understand what do they mean by Sharia. So if you go and ask those people, the 70%, you need to ask them specific questions. What exactly in the Sharia law that you prefer? And I don't know the answer. Maybe said 70% want to behead people and cut their arms. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Another argument that you hear a lot here is that, Islam is a political system. It's not a religion. It's an ideology, right?
Aren't all religions ideologies? In Europe, Christianity was an ideology, and it's like a political system too. Here's the thing, just to answer this argument. Religions do not evolve, right? What happened in Europe between the Dark Ages and now, that Christianity didn't evolve, it's the same book, right? But that same book was used in order to commit atrocities and commit crimes against humanity and commit wars. The same thing that religion is Islam is used now. What was the difference is that the Christian communities evolved beyond that. The problem that we have in the Islamic world is not that the religion being evolved, is the community evolving beyond the literal interpretation of certain verses. So you can still have people still being Muslims and say, well, you know what, this will be just going to be a spiritual guidance for us, but we are not going to use that kind of this all look like all or none is the ones that being put by authorities. Everyday people don't care. They care about their everyday life. They really don't care about if someone is putting food on their table and they're having good jobs, they don't care. But it is the whole thing of we only need to work under this kind of political Islam.
Right.
These are the groups like the Muslim Brotherhood or the Salafis or the extreme one, they are using that. And this is why their ideology needs to be revoked and need to be faced. If you're a Muslim, you want to go into politics, welcome, but you have to play under secular rules, complete secular rules.
And so why do you think that has not become a more popular sort of ideology in Egypt?
Yeah, because Egypt has been ruled by the military for 60 years, and religion is a very strong weapon to keep everybody in check. We have never been an Islamic republic, right?
Right.
It is the conservative military who have used this kind of rules in order to make people under control. It's just a method of control.
Is it sort of that there's the hardcore people who actually want to implement all of this and put everybody under these very repressive regime are kind of a small minority, or do you think it's broader?
It doesn't really matter if you're a small minority. It could be a minority, but you can be a very strong minority. The Muslim Brotherhood is just like 1 million people, but they're very organized, and they can spread their ideology very easily.
Shifting gears now, about American politics. Famous comedians like Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock, a lot of them are saying now that they don't want to go to college campuses because people can't take a joke. Do you think that they're just whining and that they don't actually have to deal with that sort of backlash like you did? Or is there something to that?
But to be politically correct is okay, but you really need to take a joke. There's a difference between how you deal with when you wage a war against political correctness, like the Donald Trump and co does, which means they're being rude. And just like, satire, it's just like you can offend people if it's comedy, and you know that it's not ill-intentioned. And I really want to see more of those barriers being broken and more jokes to be done. People just need to lighten up.
Would you perform on college campuses the way it is?
If they pay me, I will. I don't care.
Yeah. And take a few tweets. Do you see sort of a similar thing here where a lot of these political parties don't really have, real ideology behind them that people can attach themselves to? It's just sort of like tribal warfare.
It is tribal warfare. I mean, and I said in the beginning, truth doesn't matter anymore. It is like, I'm voting for this guy because I hate the other guy. I mean, there is absolutely no reason for people voting for Trump other than they just hate the liberals.
Do you think that Donald Trump represents like a unique sort of authoritarian threat in this country? Could you see him?
It's a threat if the system doesn't hold him back.
And do you think that also exists? Like, are there authoritarian tendencies on the other side of the aisle too? Because you talk a lot about Republicans and,
There are like also authoritarian tendencies on the left, but they're more liberal with people's personal liberties, which is, I think, it's the most important.
Do you think that Donald Trump...
I mean, both of them bombed the Middle East very effectively. And so, there's no difference there.
What is next for you?
I hope to have a place in the American media. Maybe I'll have my own show, a movie, TV, sitcom. Who knows?
And you're living in Los Angeles now, in California?
Yeah.
How have your expectations of moving here matched up with reality?
Well, it's good. I mean, in 1 year I have a book out. I've been on the late night circle. I had a show last year called Democracy Handbook on Fusion. So it's not a bad first year. Yeah. So now I'm kind of like in a new stage of my life. I'm trying to reinvent myself at the age of 43 in a country that's not mine, in a language that's not mine.
Yeah.
So it is interesting and challenging and terrifying.
Well, I hope that we get to see much more of you in the future.
Thank you so much.